Hello and welcome to Lecture 2, Part 2 on A Midsummer Night's Dream. The previous lecture I experienced some technical difficulties, which is why the lecture ended so abruptly. So let's pick up where we left off. I was talking about this particular concept, the basic problems of existence, and I discussed two problems. Today I'd like to turn to a third. But to recap, remember the first problem. When you come into the world, you come into the world as a conscious, sentient being. You have a brain. You have a brain, and that means you're conscious. And to be conscious means you're sentient. In other words, you can feel. So you come into the world as a conscious, sentient being, and you're born in this state of dissatisfaction. You're born with needs. You're born broken, like the broken toy from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. You're the broken toy, or you're born in the quicksand. That's where you find yourself with problems, and that's what your brain is doing. Remember, the brain is an evolutionary tool. It evolved to detect problems and to try to resolve those problems. And so you're born in this state, and that's the first problem. The second problem is that you are constantly struggling to resolve these problems. These problems are relentless. If you satisfy one problem, then another problem materializes. And I was trying to think of another metaphor. I was thinking about, I used to play tennis many, many years ago in high school, and I was thinking of your brain as a tennis court. And on one side of the tennis court is your subconscious. And on the other side of the tennis court is your conscious. And the subconscious always puts the ball in play. So the subconscious serves the ball, and the ball represents a problem, serves the tennis ball, and the consciousness sees the ball when it lands on that side of the court. And the consciousness the conscious part of you tries to resolve this problem that's been served to you. And again, the server on the side of the subconscious always puts the ball in play. Now, sometimes the server may ace you. That means that the ball is served in such a way that you can't reach the ball, and the server wins the point automatically. So, for example, you may be served with incurable cancer, and there's nothing you can do about it. You've been aced, and you're going to suffer and die. Perhaps rather quickly, as quick as an ace. Or perhaps you've been served with cancer, and there's a chance that you might be able to survive. So you're able to hit the ball back. But the problem keeps coming back. The server on the side of the subconscious hits the cancer problem back because you're struggling trying to cure the disease. So you keep battling the ball back and forth. Now eventually you may lose. You may hit the ball in the net and you may be defeated by that problem, by cancer. But you may also, perhaps, you can defeat the cancer. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you hit a really wicked two-fisted cross-court shot and you're able to survive the cancer and you're the winner. You triumph. So, of course, what does that mean, you're being the winner? It means that you took care of the problem. You need to be the winner. To take care of the problem, you need to be the winner. So, yeah, I thought that was a rather good analogy. So let's continue with that. Let's say you defeat the cancer with that cross-court backhand. But what do you find? Well, there's the server on the side of the subconscious, and suddenly he serves a new ball, a new problem. And you're confronted with a new problem now. It hits the side of your court, the side of consciousness. You become aware of this new problem. Now you've got the problem of Alzheimer's disease. So these two. I think that's a rather good metaphor, isn't it? I don't know. That just appeared in my consciousness. I don't know why my subconscious made those associations, but it did. At any rate, those are the first two problems when it comes to this idea of existence. that idea that you are born on the tennis court, and the balls are coming, and the balls are relentless, they're constant, and in the end, of course, you're going to lose. You're not going to be able to resolve the problems in the end. You'll never be the victor in the end. The server, you can think of the server, the one who puts the ball in play, the pain, the problem in play, as the top seed in the tournament who never loses, because you just can't win in the end. So we talked about these different types of problems last time as well. We talked about biological needs. You have these biological needs once you come into existence, and you have psychological needs. You have this ego. You long to feel special and important. You want to feel secure and comfortable. And you also have cultural needs. The society you're raised in, the culture you're raised in, tells you what you need, and very quickly many people fall into this trap, the cultural trap, and they believe they need these, what society says. These people believe they need whatever it might be that society says that they need. So those are the first two problems, but there's a third, the magical number. There's a third problem, and it's the most frightening problem of all, and that is you were meant to be in a constant state of dissatisfaction. That's how all organisms on the planet evolved. You were born into that state, and you were meant to be born in it. That's what evolution does, because otherwise, how are you going to be motivated? Why would you be motivated to act unless you're confronted with some sort of problem? Think about it. You wake up in the morning, if you didn't have any problems confronting you, there'd be no need for you to get out of bed. You could just lounge and lie in bed forever. But the organism is driven to get out of bed because of biological needs, psychological needs, cultural addictions. So you are stuck in this state. You're born in it. It's relentless, but it was meant to be. You're meant to be unhappy. You evolved to be dissatisfied, not to be satisfied. You didn't evolve to be happy. You're constantly, that's why in the Declaration of Independence it says the pursuit of happiness. You're not meant to be in this state of happiness. You may attain the state of happiness temporarily. The cancer may be cured, and you think you're a winner, but you needed that cancer to be cured. If you never had that cancer, you would have no need. So you may feel like the winner, but you're only a winner because the problem has been resolved. You managed to hit that cross-court shot and resolve that particular problem. So, this is what motivates you to get out of bed in the morning. All organisms are motivated because they have these, they're in these states of need, of want, of desire, of dissatisfaction. And you might momentarily resolve the problems, but there's another ball going to be served to you, and it's constant and relentless, and that's just the state you were meant to be in. This idea that you can attain, that you can live happily ever after, or that you can attain happiness. You can see there's a problem here. The realist would argue, no, that's not what is going on here in this world. Now, there might be, a comic optimist might object here and say, well, what about the pleasures in this world? Surely there are genuine pleasures to be had. But I would argue, no, there really aren't if you think about it. The ouch comes first, the ball that represents the problem, the pain that you have to resolve, the need, the desire, the lack, the want, that comes first. So I don't know if I said this before, but if I have an itch and I scratch it, I think, oh, there's a genuine pleasure. Oh, that feels so good, scratching that itch. There's a genuine pleasure in life. But not really, is it? Because I would have no need to scratch the itch if the itch wasn't irritating, if it wasn't bothersome to begin with. So the pleasure is derived from removing the problem, from taking away the whip. So you're born with this whip. The evolution is like a slave driver, and it owns you, and you're born with this whip at your back, and you're constantly running from the whip, trying to escape the problem, because the problem means you're suffering in some way. You lack something, you need something, and so you're in this state of unease and dissatisfaction, and you want to resolve it. That's what your brain's doing. It's detecting the problem and trying to fix it, trying to fix the broken, trying to get the ball back on the other side of the court. So it looks like there's such a thing as a carrot, as a genuine pleasure that you're chasing. You're chasing, you're pursuing that carrot, that genuine pleasure. But there's really no carrot there. The carrot's just an illusion. Remember, the illusions are real, but they're not an accurate depiction of reality. The illusions exist, but they're not accurate. You see the carrot exists, but what is the carrot actually? The carrot is just the removal of the whip that you're being driven by constantly. You can't escape the whip. You can't avoid the whip. So yes, think about it. Think about the biological whips. Let's say, think about a nice, tall, cool glass of water. That's a genuine pleasure, isn't it? Or is it? Because you wouldn't need that nice, tall, cool glass of water if you weren't thirsty. So you can see how the pleasure of enjoying the water, it's attached to this idea of thirst, this need, this pain. Think about a delicious 5-course dinner. Oh boy, that's a genuine pleasure, isn't it? That's good, that's tasty. But wait a minute, now think about it. You really wouldn't need to sit down and enjoy that 5-course meal if you weren't hungry, if your belly weren't calling you, and your belly's in pain and it's saying, feed me, Seymour. So again, you see that the ouch comes first, the hunger comes first, and what you think is a genuine pleasure, a carrot, yum, 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 tasty, what's up, doc? What you think is a genuine pleasure is really just, it's taking care of that problem. It's temporarily removing that whip at your back. I would even argue, and this play is about another topic you could explore in this play if you're interested, is sex, because, with love comes sex. So sex in A Midsummer Night's Dream, what is the play saying about sex? How does the play function? Look at the characters and the setting and the plot, and particularly the language. What is the play saying about sex? Does the play present us with a romantic view of the sexual act, or does it give a comic, optimistic view, or is it giving us a realistic depiction of the sexual act and a tragic, pessimistic view of sex? So if you think about even an orgasm, you think, wow, that's some orgasm's so great they blow the sawdust right out of your head. But think about it now. Why would you need the orgasm if you weren't first sexually frustrated? You need the orgasm. You're sexually desirous. You're in a state of frustration. So these biological needs that drive the organism, what we think are genuine pleasures, what we think are carrots, the carrots are not really carrots. It's just an illusion. The carrots are really the whip being removed. Think about psychological needs as well. Let's say You become, let's say you win the Super Bowl, for example. Wow, there's a genuine pleasure. I just won the Super Bowl. I'm king of the hill. That's going to feed my ego. I'm somebody special and important. I'm significant. That's right. Look at me. Look at me. I'm the alpha male. I just won the Super Bowl. And that's a genuine pleasure. But is it? Is it really a genuine pleasure? Why did you even begin playing football and try to win the Super Bowl if somehow you felt you needed it to boost your ego, to make yourself feel important and significant and special? After all, if you already felt really important and unique, why would you even try to win the Super Bowl? So that desire, that winning of the Super Bowl might look like the genuine pleasure, might look like the carrot, but it's really the removal of that whip. In this case, the feeling that something's lacking with you. Your ego needs some pumping up. It needs to be boosted. You need to feel good about yourself. Think about getting your essay back on a Midsummer Night's Dream and you receive an A+. Genuine pleasure. Is it? Really? Is it a carrot? No. You can see now, right? You begin to understand. You were required to write this essay, which was painful enough in itself, but your fear, your anxiety of not getting the A+ or not getting a passing grade, and that can cause you all kinds of problems, and it can do damage to your ego, perhaps. If getting an A on an essay is important to you, it can damage your ego. It can make you feel worthless, can make you feel insignificant. But you have this desire to feel like the winner. You don't want to be the loser with the L branded into your forehead. You don't need the A+ if you already feel like a winner. For some reason, you lack that winner status. And that's what you're seeking psychologically. And then, of course, our culture. Think about the cultural needs that we have. My wife has a closet full of shoes, dozens upon dozens of shoes. I can't even open the closet door anymore. If I open that closet door, I'm going to get bombarded. My brain's going to be bombarded by all these shoes falling on top of it. And it seems like a genuine pleasure for my wife. She's got this closet full of all these different kinds of shoes for every particular occasion and then some. But why does she need that closet full of shoes to begin with? Well, she bought into what the culture has told her, that she needs to look nice when she goes out, and that the shoes can boost her ego and make her feel good about herself. She can look right. She can look sexy and sharp and feel important and feel good about herself if she's got a really, really nice and expensive pair of shoes. So you see how our culture can, and we all become addicted to something. Our culture, before we know it, we all are addicted to these cultural needs and desires. So behind what appears to be every genuine pleasure, I would argue that there is this fear, this problem, this pain, this anxiety, this need, this desire, this want that's got to be resolved. Otherwise, why would you seek this genuine, what you call a genuine pleasure? After this lecture, I'm going to go take my bubble bath, and I'm going to put in all my essential oils. I'm going to light my candles and burn my incense and put on a little Jim Morrison, break on through to the other side. And is that a genuine pleasure? No, I'm trying to break on through to the other side because after this lecture, I'm going to be tired. I'm going to be exhausted physically, mentally, emotionally. and I need to escape that anxiety. And a bubble bath's going to do it for me. But it's not a real carrot, is it? It's just the whip. I'm getting rid of that whip. I'm temporarily relieving myself from that whip. And that's what it is. Now, some of you may still disagree with me, so for extra credit, here's extra credit assignment number 4. Do you disagree? Do you think there is such a thing as a genuine pleasure in life? Can you think of one? If you can, explain to me why you think it's a genuine pleasure. And of course, you earn an extra credit point, whether I agree with you or not. You might, to start off, what you could do tonight before you go to sleep, take about 3 minutes and pay attention to all the thoughts that are rising up in consciousness. And I guarantee that what you'll be recognizing is that you're wrestling, your consciousness is presenting you with some sort of problem. And you're wrestling, you're struggling, trying to pull yourself up out of that quicksand. You're trying to resolve that problem. Try 3 minutes and see. And it's relentless. One problem will arise in your consciousness, and that will be followed by another. Whether it be a thought, an idea that you're struggling to understand, whether it be a sensation, maybe you're not quite comfortable enough in the bed, you've got to move yourself, you got to adjust yourself a little bit, or maybe it's an emotion. Maybe you're feeling a little bit of anxiety because you know in a week from now you've got an essay you've got to begin writing. Think about these problems rising up in your brain. The other thing you can do as you search for a genuine pleasure is travel around the community. Go look at all the strip malls, for example. I would argue that everything you're going to see around you is saying to you, you've got a problem, we can fix it, right? If your belly's hungry, you can drive up to the Clown's Mouth at one of the fast food restaurants, and you can fix that problem. It says, come here, we can fix that problem for you. We can feel that belly. Or if you're feeling anxious or stressed, the massage parlor says, come on, we could relieve that tension for you. Come on in. Or if you're not feeling pretty enough, the beauty salon says, hey, we can fix your hair and do your makeup, give you a complete makeover, your nails and your toenails even. All right, we can fix that problem. Or maybe you're feeling unattractive and out of shape, and your biceps aren't big enough, and the gym in the strip mall says, come on in here, sign up here. We can give you those really Arnold Schwarzenegger biceps that you want that can make you feel special. So look, everywhere about you, in the community around you, everywhere is saying, you've got a problem, we can fix it, we can resolve it. Come give us your money and we'll fix that problem. Of course, you won't have as much money, and that's going to be a problem. Because what is money if you think about it? Well, money is a way to resolve problems. Money can pay your bills, can pay your electric, can pay your water, can pay your heat. Money can make your car payment and pay your rent or your mortgage on the house. Money can pay for food. All of these problems that money can resolve for you. So money isn't even a genuine. Having lots and lots and lots of money, I would argue, is not a genuine pleasure. But anyway, for an extra credit assignment, if you'd like to do that, just email it to me through Canvas. And let's return then to A Midsummer Night's Dream and the opening speech by Theseus. And I did want to take some time here because this word desires, Shakespeare introduces this word. He alerts us to this word desires at the beginning of the play. And he does so, I think, for a very important reason. Let's turn back to this passage. I'm on page 1339, Act 1, Scene 1. And again, let's analyze this passage now. And I'm going to look at the whole passage, and I'm going to pick it apart. I'm going to look at all of the elements in the passage. I'm going to think about it, just, sit back. What does this word, why this word, I'm going to ask? Why is this image? Why this metaphor? Why this simile? What is the purpose? What is the function ultimately? What is this passage doing? And how ultimately does this underscore this topic we're looking at in A Midsummer Night's Dream? So I'm going to be the scientist. I'm going to go to the text, look at this passage, look at the facts, the words, the images, the symbols, the ironies in the passage. I probably can't look at all of them, but I'll look at a few. And what I don't find, you can find. And then I'm going to be the philosopher, and I'm going to try to make the connection between what I find, the facts, the words, the phrases, and this idea of love in A Midsummer Night's Dream, romantic desire, being presented in a realistic way as well as a pessimistic, a tragic way. So let's take a look. Now, fair Hippolyta, our nuptial hour draws on apace. Notice how eager Theseus is here now. He's in the moment now. He's been thinking about their wedding. It finally, now, at last, it's hurrying. It's just a few days away. It draws on a pace. You imagine the horses racing to its destination. It draws on a pace. Our nuptial hour draws on a pace. Notice, too, he refers to Hippolyta as fair. He finds her attractive, doesn't he? He finds her, he desires her physically. Now, fair Hippolyta, our nuptial hour draws on a pace. So you see how eager he is, how anxious, how excited he is for their wedding day. 4 happy days bring in another moon. He's even counting the days, isn't he? 4. And they're happy days because now, in time, the wedding is very, very close. 4 happy days. And of course, during the day, he can keep busy. He can be occupied to pass the time. 4 happy days bring in another moon. And of course, the moon is the conventional symbol for romantic love, for desire. Another moon, a new moon. It's interesting. We're going to find out that Theseus is a kind of love him and leave him character. He tends to hop from one bed to another once he's had his sexual fulfillment. And here, another moon, another romance, a new moon is coming on, will appear in the sky here. But there's always a but, isn't there? He's happy that only 4 days, it's hurrying along. He can keep himself occupied. A new moon, new romance. And here there's the but. But, here's the irony. But, oh, methinks how slow this old moon wanes. Notice the exclamation point. Boy, this is painful. How slow this old moon wanes. And you can see the moon in the sky, and now it's taking all this time to vanish, to disappear in the sky, so the new moon will appear. And the exclamation point, and you can see his frustration. We hear his frustration. She lingers my desires. She's like a tease, this old moon. Notice the moon is being personified here. The ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans believed that there was a goddess of the moon. And one thing the goddess represented was chastity. And here Theseus is being prevented, isn't he, from fulfilling his sexual desires. He's very frustrated here. He wants to make some whoopee. And he has to wait. It's interesting why he has to wait here. He's the Duke of Athens now, isn't he? And I don't know if I mentioned before, but of course Athens is the birthplace of reason, of science and philosophy. And the city itself represents law and order. You have to have laws, you have to have order. There have to be rules and regulations that people follow, so they have to become civilized so they can interact with each other and they can be productive. And to do so, they have to live harmoniously with each other, so they have to be limited in what they do. Remember, civilization limits what you can do. It doesn't give you the freedom. Civilization says when you get on the highway, you have to obey the speed limit. Don't go over 60 miles per hour. We want to live in harmony. We want to be productive. And if you speed, if you go over the speed limit, then you're not only putting yourself in harm's way, but you're putting everybody else on the highway in harm's way. Of course, many people don't obey the speed limit, do they? It's interesting. Many people aren't rational, are they? It's all about, they're comic optimists. It's all about their happy ever after ending. They want to get to work on time. If they get to work on time, they'll be happy. It'll be a happy ending on that highway. So they don't really care about all the other human beings. Remember, the comic pessimist is concerned with all the human beings and even all the other organisms on the planet, but not the comic optimist. It's the hero or the heroine that wins. The other characters, they're not so important. So this old moon wanes. The moon here could be representing chastity. The idea that Theseus has to wait. He's the Duke of Athens now. He is he is the authority in Athens, so he has to set an example. He can't engage in premarital sex with Hippolyta. We can't have all the young people running around engaging in premarital sex and babies being born without a proper nest to be raised in. That's a big problem. You got to build a proper nest if you go and lay your eggs in it. So we can descend into chaos if we don't follow this idea of love. Sex is attached to love, and sex, it can have some very troublesome consequences, even dangerous consequences, which we'll see in the play. But this old moon wanes. She lingers my desires. He's very resentful, isn't he? He's personifying, he imagines a moon. She lingers my desires. He appears to be resentful here. She's like a tease, and he's frustrated, and he has to wait. He is the role model. He is now the Duke of Athens. He's the head of this society. And this is a very interesting simile next here, isn't it? She lingers my desires like to a stepdame or a dowager, long withering out a young man's revenue. It's interesting, not many critics talk about this simile, and those that do seem to struggle with it, and it's usually cut from most film adaptations or theatrical productions of A Midsummer Night's Dream, but I think it's rather straightforward. The stepdame or the dowager, these are women who have power, because they have wealth, they have money. It's quite unusual for women in a patriarchal world here, because we are in a patriarchal society, a society where men rule. You see the word patriarch, pa, in the word patriarch. Men rule in a patriarchal society. There's a patriarchal order. Men perceive themselves as superior to women, and so men are in the positions of authority and power. In Athens, of course, Theseus is the state father, if you will. He is the father figure, the authority figure, and he rules. He is a male. And then, of course, you have the family father figure, Aegeus, the father of Hermia. He's the family father figure, and he rules the family. Again, a male. And, well, you even have the ancient Greeks. If you lived in ancient Greece and you were a romantic, you believed in the Greek gods. And there are both male and female Greek gods. It's interesting how they're always anthropomorphized. The gods are always given a human features. And there are female Greek gods. But the king of the Greek gods is male. It's Zeus. He's the king. And that metaphor is often used for gods, the king. Zeus is the king of Mount Olympus, which is equivalent to a kind of heaven or paradise. It's his kingdom. He reigns in his kingdom. And he reigns over the mortals as well. And the patriarchs are all male. And of course, you think about it, Athens is also the birthplace of democracy, but it's interesting Shakespeare chooses Athens as the setting for his play, or the beginning here, the first setting of his play, because I think once again, we tend to romanticize Athens as the birthplace of reason and science and knowledge, and we're going to see that most of the characters in this play aren't rational. They aren't scientific. They aren't philosophical. And we also think of Athens as the birthplace of democracy, where everyone within that city-state, Athens, has equal political rights, but it's a patriarchal order, and the men rule, and even more so, it isn't just the men who rule. Remember, in ancient Greece, there were slaves, and of course women were treated as possessions, as properties, essentially as slaves as well. They were owned by their husbands. They were seen as possessions. But it's not just men who rule in this democracy, it's rich men of privilege and power. So it's really actually an aristocracy, isn't it? It's not a true democracy where everyone has equal political rights. Those in power are the rich men with, they're the ones who have the status and the connections, and they're the ones with the wealth, and they hold on to that wealth tightly, and they pass it down to their sons, to their male heirs, from generation to generation. Their sons inherit an enormous amount of privilege and power and wealth without having to earn it. Everybody else in the society has to earn, has to be productive, has to contribute to the society. But not the young men who have rich fathers. And much like in our society today, I mean, ostensibly we're a republic. We elect our officials to rule over us, and we imagine that each of us has equal political rights, but we're really ruled by the 2%, the wealthiest people, the multi-billionaires who own us, actually, who own government and own industry and own basically all of the institutions. These rich, wealthy, powerful men, they pass that wealth on to their offspring, to their children, sons and daughters. And these sons and daughters don't have to earn that wealth. They're just handed it. So they don't have to produce anything of value in the society. And of course, we're supposed to be a capitalistic system where you earn, you produce and you earn. By being productive, right? By being more and more productive, you can earn more and more. But that's not where we find ourselves. And it's interesting how a lot of people support this idea of inheritance when it's really not a fair game, I would argue. And the economic game is the most important game. It's the game of, right? The prize is money, and the money means you take away your pain, you take away your problems, your needs, your wants. You've got to have money to escape that harm, escape that pain. It's the most important game in town, the economic game, and yet the wealthiest who pass down this unimaginable amount of money to their children, these children are having an unimaginable head start. Can you imagine? Let's take another sport. Talking about games again. I like to use games as metaphors. Can you imagine the Olympics? Imagine your father wins the gold medal, and then when you come of age, you don't have to compete in the Olympics. All you need to do is collect the gold medal. Your father gives it to you. He earned it, right? But you don't have to. He just passes it down to you. Can you imagine how upset people would become? That would seem so unfair, so unjust. I don't think most people would accept that. That game wouldn't be one that they'd want to play. It's not fair. It's not a fair game. It's not a perfect analogy, is it? Because most of the wealth, the exceptionally rich, they gain their wealth through exploitation. It's a sort of romantic idea that a person rises through the ranks to become exceptionally rich. No, most of it's off the backs of other people, exploiting other people, scheming to get more of the pie, if you will. They get less of the pie, you get more, and you become wealthy in doing so. And then again, inheritance goes way back. This inherited money goes far, far back in time. But at any rate, this simile here, I digress, don't I? Well, actually, that would make an interesting topic you could explore in the play if you're interested in, if you are politically minded and you'd like to look at this idea of wealth and privilege and inheritance in the play, and what is the play ultimately saying when it comes to these privileged young lovers, these children of these rich, powerful men in this patriarchal order. So we are in a patriarchal world, and this is unusual that a stepdame or a dowager has money. For some reason, for one reason or another, the male, the authority figure in the family, no longer has that power. He's either absent or he's died, and now the women hold the power because the sons, the young men, aren't of age yet to collect their inheritance. And these women hold on to the purse strings, and these young men, look what it says, like the old moon that wanes and lingers Theseus' sexual desires. Here Theseus is imagining, he feels energetic like a young man, right, because of his eagerness to engage in sex with Hippolyta. But he's being prevented from doing so, just like the young men who are expecting their inheritance, their revenue, have to wait too. Because these women, again, the moon being personified as a woman, there seems to be a resentment towards women in the society, right? You see that, don't you? The men who believe they're superior, they don't like the idea that women can have power, can have control. That's a threat to their ego, isn't it? Because they believe, it's a sexist world, it's a chauvinist world where they believe that men are essentially of more value than women. But these stepdames and these dowagers are holding tight to that money. They won't let it go. They've got it locked up in the safe, and the young men don't have access to it. And it's withering out the young man's revenue. You get the idea of the image of the stepdames and the dowagers who just refuse to die. They get older and older, and they become more and more withered and shriveled up, and they won't die so that the young man can get all that wealth. But notice again, the men haven't earned the wealth. They're just going to be handed that money. They don't have to produce anything. They don't have to go out and work and do something to benefit society, to make us a more civilized city-state. No, they're just given that money. And what does that money represent, that revenue? What does it represent for young men? Well, we know money, particularly in a patriarchal world, money for young men represents power, privilege, status, and with that, with money, with power, comes sex. So money is a symbol for the young men. It gives them power, and it gives them an advantage in the sexual game, doesn't it? In the game of conquering, right? Going out and conquering, being the sexual hero, the sexual victor. Because what will they do with that money? Well, they can wear the sharp suits, the fancy $500 suits, and they can drive the Lamborghinis, and they can afford to buy the females jewelry and diamonds and furs and all beautiful clothes and so forth. Because a lot of females, particularly in a patriarchal order, where females don't have power, their one means toward having some amount of power is to beautify themselves, to become attracted to those men who do have power. And so very quickly these women become addicted to looking like objects, to looking like trophy wives, if you will, to prettifying themselves. It's why even today you see a lot of women very attracted to jewelry, necklaces and diamonds and earrings. And they're trying to present themselves right in a sexual way so that they can, it's the sex game of finding the best mate out there. The woman who longs for the alpha male to participate in that power. And so for the young men, this revenue represents power, and power we associate with privilege, and privilege and power we both associate with sex. And this is how Theseus is feeling. He can't get hold of that sexual power that he longs for. The old moon is waning slowly, teasing, just won't die, just won't fade away in the sky, just like these stepdames and dowagers just won't bite the dust. They won't kick the bucket so that these young men can buy that fancy car and that fancy house and all those fancy accessories to attract what they sexually desire here. And the young men certainly haven't earned it, have they? So this idea of desire here, this emphasis on desire, and particularly this biological desire, this drive here, this is the first thing. Remember, we're talking about love, and we're looking at romantic love in the play. And the first thing that Shakespeare does in this play is he says, let's take a look, let's reduce romantic love and find out what it really means, what it really is. And biologically speaking, it's about sex. It's about this frustration, this need, this problem, and this drive. The organism is driven to fulfill this need, to take away this whip, to rise above this quicksand, to fix this broken toy so that it can, become the winner, the king of the hill. Not the loser, but the winner. Look at the next, halfway down the page here. Shakespeare's going to continue to question this romantic view of love. Remember the romantic view of love, the romantic view here. If you're romantic and you hear that word love, what do you imagine? Well, you think that there's a soulmate somewhere in the world for you, and you're going to meet that one special person who's unique, and that person will find you unique as well. And it's all destined. It's meant to be. Everything happens for a reason. And there may be obstacles in your way, forces of evil that attempt to thwart your love and to separate you. But in the end, the forces of good, true love will, in the end, triumph and defeat any obstacles, any evil problems, hurdles in the way. And so, you and your honey bunny will live, will reach that happy ending. You will be the hero and the heroine of your story, and you will live happily ever after because you are an optimist and you believe that life is good. Life is good. You are a winner. You have found true love. And of course, you will want to promote life. And you ultimately will want to bring new life into the world because life is of intrinsic value. It's the thing that is of most value. That's the romantic vision, isn't it? And already at the very top of this play, Shakespeare is undermining that vision. It isn't that you're attracted to someone's soul or spirit, that there's some special aura, some supernatural connection between the two of you. No, it's all about biological drive, the sexual need. Gotta have it. I want to make that whoopee. That's what it is. What else is it? Let's look at this idea of true love. What else is it? Look at line 16. We learned something a bit disturbing here, don't we? Theseus turns to Hippolyta again, and he says, Hippolyta, I wooed thee with my sword, and won thy love doing thee injuries. But I will wed thee in another key, with pomp, with triumph, and with reveling. Interesting. I wooed thee with my sword. It hardly sounds like this romantic understanding of true love. What's the sword doing in here? He courted her, he wooed her with his sword. And we remember that Theseus is one of the greatest of ancient Greek military heroes. He's a powerful soldier, strong, brave, fearless. And he wooed Hippolyta with his sword. Hippolyta, remember, was the queen, according to Greek legend. She was the queen of the Amazons. And the Amazons were a tribe of fierce warrior women. In fact, the Amazons rejected the patriarchal order. They rejected the notion that men were fundamentally superior to women. They rejected that idea that was established in the society around them. They rejected the establishment. They rejected the status quo. They weren't part of the herd. They weren't just more sheeple, listening to the patriarchal order and believing in it and abiding by it and not questioning it. No, they stood up and they fought against it. And so they formed this tribe of these powerful, fierce female warriors. Of course, it's interesting that they took on to assert their equality, that they actually took on a traditional role that men have held, and that is the role of the soldier. The men, traditionally speaking, men have ruled the military, and men have fought wars. Men have created wars, and men have fought wars. But these women, no. They fought back. In fact, the word Amazon, interesting side note here, the word Amazon means breastless, because the Amazon women, they were so determined to be equal to men, to be just as powerful and skilled warriors as their male counterparts, that they lopped off their breasts. They had their breast removed. Back then, I imagine that would have been, of course, this is just a legend. They did not actually exist. But you could imagine having your breast removed without morphine. I'm always reminded of Abigail Adams, because, the wife of John Adams, who did have a breast cancer and did have to have her breast removed without without morphine. Just unimaginable horror. But at any rate, I digress. So yes, these Amazon women, they had their breasts removed because that made them more skilled with the bow and arrow, right? They didn't have their breast in the way here, interfering with their ability to, their precision to hit their target. And so Amazon means breastless. So these women rejected the patriarchal world they found themselves in. And Hippolyta was the queen of the Amazon. So you can imagine the kind of power that she held. And you can imagine her ego. I mean, she's not king of the hill, she's queen of the hill. And she believes that women are equal, if not superior. You can imagine that these women begin to think themselves as superior to men. And that's what egos do. I mean, sexism can run both ways. It's a two-way street, isn't it? So these women imagined they were actually superior to the men. So you can imagine Hippolyta and the enormous ego that this woman had, being queen of the Amazon. She's queen of the hill. And Theseus shows up, and he defeats the Hippolyta and the Amazons. And he says here, reminds us, and people sitting in Shakespeare's audience would have been familiar with these tales, these ancient Greek and ancient Roman tales, because during Shakespeare's time, there was a surge of renewed interest in ancient Greece and ancient Rome. It's one of the catalysts for this movement from the Middle Ages into the Renaissance, this idea of reason, and this original humanitarian idea that human beings have this ability to reason, and therefore they should use that faculty to advance civilization. Of course, today, humanitarian is a word I wouldn't wish to be associated with today, because it's been corrupted. The idea today is that human beings are special and that they're somehow privileged and they're better than other animals, other organisms that can feel and experience pain. It's a kind of prejudice. Yeah, it's a deep prejudice, I would argue. It's where human beings, it's human-centered, this human-centered notion that human beings are all important. There certainly isn't any evidence. Our brains are our chief tool, but other animals have tools that we don't have. We don't have sharp claws, for example, or we don't have the teeth of a carnivore. We don't have slicing fangs. And we certainly don't have the tough hide, let's say, of an alligator or a crocodile. If you drop us into an ocean, this idea that we're somehow at the top of the food chain, you can see that not really. Unless we can use our brains to some way scheme our way and get out of that ocean, the great white shark is going to come along. The great white shark rules the oceans, doesn't he? Or if you drop us in the Amazonian jungle, chances are we're going to be somebody's midnight snack, a jaguar, for example. So our brain is our chief evolutionary tool. That's what we use to avoid harm, whereas other animals have other tools to escape punishment and to avoid pain. But at any rate, Theseus says, I wooed thee with my sword. And of course, the sword is a conventional symbol, again, for male power. It's a phallic symbol. It represents the male penis. Right? Well, the male penis, that's redundant. It represents the penis, doesn't it? The sword is a symbol of sexual power, as well as physical strength. And he says, I wooed thee with my sword and won thy love doing thee injuries. What does he mean by I wooed thee with my sword? Well, one interpretation is that Hippolyta was just so impressed because, Theseus and his warriors, they defeat the Amazonian women. They defeat Hippolyta and her tribe of these fierce warriors, these fierce female warriors, and she's just so awed and so impressed by Theseus' sword. In other words, his military strength, his prowess, his skill on the battlefield, his fearlessness. All of this has impressed her so much that she's fallen for him. And this is what Theseus imagines, isn't it? I wooed thee with my sword and won thy love doing thee injuries. Notice that word injuries too. Interesting, isn't it? Because Hippolyta is no longer has any power. She's been brought back to Athens, and she no longer rules over a society, a tribe here. So she now lacks power, and this idea of injuries, so injuries to her ego, as well as injuries, we can imagine literal injuries, right? We can imagine all the the female Amazons who were defeated and horribly maimed, perhaps, and disabled, and maybe even suffering, from post-traumatic stress syndrome. We know that that exists. It's a very real, painful problem. And also many who probably slowly died on the battlefield. So all of these injuries that were caused during the war, I won thy love doing the injuries. And here again he says he's won her love. He imagines that she loves him. He's won her love doing her injuries here. And here's the second key word. First we have the word desires, and then we have the word love. Desire and love. And Shakespeare, I would argue, is introducing these two key concepts because he wants us to think more rationally about them. He wants us to sort of peel back, if you will, this big, beautiful, magnificent, shiny, delicious, juicy apple we call love. He wants us to peel back the skin and see what we find. Perhaps this is a poisoned apple that we're about to bite into. That is possible. Let's take a break and I shall return. And I am back, and we've turned to the topic of love and another concept for your midterm exam, the problems of love. Let's talk a little bit more about this term love that we find here in the passage. First of all, it's a four-letter word in the sense that it's rather mushy, isn't it? I mean, just kind of vague. What do we mean by love? I mean, do we mean I love broccoli? I have a particular personal subjective taste for broccoli. I love spinach. I love, what else might it be? I love taking walks in the evening. I love beautiful sunsets. Is that what we mean by love? I love having a good time on the weekends with my friends partying. What? What does it mean exactly, this idea of love? So it's a kind of mushy word. It's a four-letter word, and it covers just, we use it for all kinds of desire, all things that we're attracted to or addicted to or desire or want. I love that. I love this. I love this other thing too. So the first problem, I think, is it's just a word that it's too vague. It's too unclear what we mean by love. We use it in so many different senses, so it isn't specific enough. But there's a second problem that's even worse, I think. In that we're not communicating effectively when we're using the word love. That first problem is a kind of mushy, vague word. And that second problem is it's biased. It really is, if you think about it. The emotion of love itself, it's bigoted. It's a four-letter word in that sense, in that it's ugly. A four-letter word, love, right? Because think for a moment, it's about, I love my baby. I love my honey bunny. I love my mama and daddy. I love my brothers and sisters. I love my family. You can see the prejudice, the bias here. It's my baby that matters. My honey bunny. So the personal, those people we know in our personal lives, we become prejudiced because these are the people we know, that we're familiar with, that we become attached to, become addicted to, if you will. They, in some sense, feed our needs. They feed our security, our comfort, our ego. And it's quite biased. I love my baby more than I love your baby. My baby is more important than your baby. If one of our babies has to develop childhood leukemia, well, I mean, that's a terrible thing, but I'm sorry, I'd rather it be your baby that gets the leukemia, not my baby. My baby is what's more important. I love my doggy. I love my doggy, not your doggy. If one of our doggies has to be hit by a car and crawl off in the ditch and slowly die, well, I mean, that's a horrible thing. Yes, that's terrible. Oh, how awful. But, I mean, if it has to happen, I'd rather it be your doggy, not my doggy. I love my doggy. It's my doggy that matters more. Just a moment, please. And I'm back. Another technical difficulty. Here I'm back, though. So, as I was saying, it's my baby that matters, my doggy that matters, my mama that matters. I love my baby, my honey bunny, my daddy. And they're more important. But rationally speaking, we can see that that is a bias, isn't it? It's nepotistic because you've got a baby here, one baby brain, and one baby brain here. And a brain in pain is a brain in pain. A baby brain in pain, one baby brain in pain, one baby brain in pain. That's the equal. They're of equal value. Remember, pain, according to the tragic pessimist, is of intrinsic value. It's of most value. And one baby brain in pain is equivalent to another baby brain in pain. The my baby, the idea of possession, that has no value. That value is projected. It's only in your head that your baby is more important. You love your baby. You're attached more to your baby. That's a projection in your head. That's not rational. That's psychological. Your psychological desire, your need that your baby be safe because it's your baby. You've got the attachment to your baby. But that's not rational. 1 equals 1. It doesn't matter which baby brain is in pain. It's equal. It's both. It's a bad thing, no matter which one. So this second problem with love, at the personal level, as I said, it can be nepotistic. It can be biased. And that raises an issue too. That's a problem with love. And it can get worse, can't it? It can become worse than a mere prejudice or a mere bias. I shouldn't say mere bias or mere prejudice, but can become far worse than a bias or a prejudice. It can lead to exploitation. It can lead to enslavement. It's my Ku Klux Klan member. I love my Ku Klux Klan member. I love my Ku Klux Klan member. So you see, it can lead to all kinds of problems and all kinds of harm. I love my terrorist organization. That's my religious terrorist organization. You can see how the biases grow, the prejudices grow, and they can become violent, they can become aggressive, they can become genocidal. I love my species, human beings. Oh, they're my species. I love my bologna sandwich. I love my pork barbecue. I love my chicken McNuggets. So this idea of love, it can begin as a bias, and that bias can fester and grow. The tumor can become larger and larger and larger, and more dangerous and more harmful, and it can reach out. I'm mixing metaphors again here, but it can reach out like the tentacles of an octopus. It can reach out for its prey, and it can do a lot of damage, a lot of destruction, a lot of harm in the world. So this idea that love is an emotion that we should all glorify, and we should all just wallow, take a bubble bath in it. It's such a great emotion, isn't it? Love is all you need. Shakespeare is questioning this idea, because what do we have here with Theseus? I wooed thee with my sword and won thy love, doing thee injuries. No, that's not what's happening. Theseus is a man, and he's sexist. He believes men are superior. He believes he is superior to Hippolyta. It's feeding his ego that he's conquered her. It's making him feel like the king of the hill. He's at the top of the heap. He's the cream of the crop at the top of the heap. He's the king of that hill here. So he's strutting his stuff because he feels it makes him to have defeated Hippolyta in battle. We can see the psychology beneath this idea of love here. Remember, the romantic love is this emotion to be worshipped and to be revered. Love is a many-splendored thing. All you need is love. Love makes the world go round. This love that Theseus has for his sex, for himself, for his ego, to meet his needs, his desires, to feel special and important, this is peeling away that apple, the apple of true love. Remember, the romantic believes in this notion of true love. But Shakespeare's peeling that skin away from the apple, and we're seeing this is a poison apple. And this thing called true love, first it's about sexual desire. Let's just face it. It's about the hormones. And second, it's about the ego. It's someone's psychology getting in the way of being rational. And finally, it's about a particular culture one's raised in, having an impact on that person. Remember, Theseus is born in a patriarchal world where he has been told since he was a little bitty boy that men should rule over women. It's just natural. It's the patriarchal law. The patriarchs, the fathers of the society, and they get their law from the patriarchal god, Zeus. Zeus, the heavenly father, is male. And Zeus, according to the patriarchs, the men, has handed down the law that men should dominate women. They are superior. Men should rule. After all, it's the king of Mount Olympus. It's his kingdom. Zeus is a man. The men are in control. And they rationalize their control by saying the patriarchal order, is given down from the gods. And Theseus is the state father, and Aegeus is the family father. It's the patriarchal order. And Hippolyta and her Amazons, they've upset that order. They've gotten out of line. And that's a problem for men who've been raised in this world where women ought to stay in line. They don't speak up. They don't have no rights. They have to stay in line, stay in their place, know their place. All right? They should be in the household, cooking and cleaning and having children, having male heirs. Pass down that inheritance too. So Hippolyta and her women, they have disrupted, they have disturbed, they have upset the apple cart here. The patriarchal order. And Theseus and his soldiers, his Greek warriors, they have to put these women, they have to show these women who rule. They have to show them. They have to defeat them. And that's what's happening here too. So again, this idea of true love, Theseus is imagining that he's won Hippolyta's love here, that she truly loves him. He may even think he truly loves her. You get the suggestion that he does, but we can see what's happening beneath this idea of true love, romantic desire. What is it actually? And Shakespeare's telling us It's these needs, these wants, these biological urges, these drives, these psychological desires, and these cultural addictions. And all of this can lead to harm, the injuries that are caused here. I won thy love doing the injuries. And look how he dismisses it, rather glibly, doesn't he? But, there's the but again, I will wed thee in another key, with pomp, with triumph, and with reveling. He's just assuming that she's ready to party too, and to celebrate too. And he's ready to party, to revel with triumph, with pomp. Of course it's a triumph for him. He's defeated her. She no longer has any power. He has all the authority, all the power, all the control once more. And of course there's this, the ancient Greeks, of course, when they defeated their enemies, those they took prisoners, they made slaves, and they paraded them through the streets. They humiliated them by parading their captured soldiers through the streets. And this is the idea here that Hippolyta is a kind of trophy wife, if you will. I mean, it says, look what it says. Look how it feeds Theseus' ego. I defeated Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons, this upstart woman who didn't know her place in the patriarchal order of things. And I defeated the Amazon, the tribe. And look, see what I've done. That's what's going on here. I wooed thee with my sword and won thy love doing the injuries. So this third problem, how many problems have I talked about now? Actually, this is a fourth problem, isn't it? And 4 isn't a magical number, is it? Well, I don't know. Well, we'll have to think about it. Yes, 4-letter word. There we go. Love, the 4-letter word. We've seen first, the first problem of love, this concept on your midterm exam. Is it a mushy word? Everybody uses it for just about any and everything. They're not communicating effectively. They're not being exact or precise. And the second problem is the personal biases. It's my family that matters. And then finally, and then third, you have these even uglier biases that can lead to all kinds of horrors, all kinds of torture, all kinds of brutal killings, wars between the races, wars between religions, different religions, wars between countries. It's my country that matters. My country is superior. The war between the species, and the humans, of course, have an advantage there. And then, of course, this fourth problem. What is the true nature of true love? Oh, that'd make a good title for your essay. The true nature of true love. Because remember what the romantic thinks. Romantics believe in this notion of a true love. This destined love. This connection is not just a physical connection. It's not just about sex. Romantics like sex, but it isn't just about sex. It's also about a connection between souls. They even use words like soul mates. It's a connection. It's not only a physical connection, but it's a spiritual connection as well. And it was all preordained and designed. Everything happens for a reason. And in the end, love will triumph. You hear this expression, the good will triumph over the evil. Love conquers all. If you hear somebody use that phrase, love conquers all, well, then you know you're talking to a romantic. And remember, love conquers all. The romantic imagines it's all about my story, my happy ending. I get the hero or the heroine. I'm Cinderella, and it's about my getting Prince Charming. And we live happy at the end and ever after in a magical kingdom in the sky. Not just the magical kingdom here on the planet, but some supernatural magical kingdom as well. And ain't life good? We've got the life is what it's all about because I'm the winner. It's my happy ending. Happily ever after ending. Life's good, so let's just continue with this thing called life. The circle of life, baby. Let's write a song about it. And all come together and sing Kumbaya. Life is so good. Let's bring more people onto the Titanic. So that's this romantic view, which Shakespeare is going to undermine, he's going to ironize, he's going to undercut this idea page after page after page throughout this text. And we see that happening here in these opening passages, in Theseus' opening words. And Theseus says, I won thy love. He's speaking to Hippolyta. I won thy love. But did he? Has he won her love? He certainly defeated her in battle. But has he won her love? And this brings us to a second problem. Remember, writing your essay, we're going through the text and we're finding all kinds of disturbing features, problems that the lovers in the play experience, or that we discern, that we can spot. Maybe they aren't spotting these problems, but we can certainly see them. So this first problem that you could write about in your essay is this idea of the true nature of true love. The idea that if you look at it carefully, if you analyze it, if you pick it apart, you see it's really comprised of three major elements: the biological drive, the psychological ego, and the cultural upbringing. All of these things have to do. They're kind of they're like the you see the look out on the lovely ocean, you see the beautiful surface and the starry sky and the lights being reflected on the surface of the ocean. Oh, what a lovely, beautiful surface, and you decide to go out and take a swim, and then suddenly you hear boom, 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 boom. And what's about to happen? You're about to be eaten by a great white shark called Jaws. Underneath this idea, this sparkling, beautiful, moonlit, starlit surface, the ocean, the one that draws you in its waters, there's a great white. There's the ugly truth here, the reality. And you're just the next prey here. This is what's happening. Does Hippolyta, so that's the first problem you can explore in your essay if you like, beginning with these passages. Notice that what I've done is I've looked at the passage. I'm focused on romantic desire, romantic love in A Midsummer Night's Dream. I'm looking at the language. I'm looking at the character of Theseus. I've considered the setting of Athens. I'm looking at the plot line, the story, the legend behind Hippolyta and Theseus, their story, their legend, ancient Greek legend, that again Shakespeare's audience would have been familiar with. So I'm considering all of these elements, and I'm particularly looking at the language in the text. I've discussed the moon. The moon is a symbol of both love and chastity. I've talked about the simile, where Theseus imagines himself like a young man who's being deprived of an inheritance, and of course he didn't earn it. That's very revealing. That's an irony. You think Theseus thinks he's earned Hippolyta's love. I wooed thee with my sword and won thy love. He thinks he's earned it by his superior military prowess, by his big biceps, baby, on that battlefield. She's just gone, oh, God, those biceps, I just can't resist them. Oh, my big, strong hero, come here, I want you. Right? He thinks he's earned her love. But the simile is revealing. These young men haven't earned that money. It's because of this patriarchal world they live in. They expect it. They deserve it. It should be given to them. Theseus thinks this way. His male ego, being raised in this patriarchal world, it is expected that men should own women. They should possess women. That women should effectively be their slaves, essentially, fundamentally, serve men. I mean, you still see it today in our traditions still. The marriage ceremony, for example, you have the question, who gives this bride away? And the father stands up and says, I do. And the father, the family authority figure, the male authority figure in the family, he gives the bride to the next authority figure, the next head of the household, the husband, the next man who will rule the household. And so the woman is passed like a possession from father to in a sense, son to the next father, the next generation. She is seen as a possession, and she has to be dressed in white. Virginity, as we see, this would be an interesting topic you could explore in the play. What's this? The concept of virginity in the play *Midsummer Night's Dream*, because both the women and the men really emphasize how important virginity is in this play. That women must be virginal when they marry. Of course, in Shakespeare's day, you couldn't take a paternity test, so men were always anxious. Because when a woman gets pregnant, you know who the mama is. You know who the mama is of the baby. But who's the daddy? No man wants to be raising some other man's baby. Think about his ego. Think about his pride. So this fear that women weren't virginal, that they had to be watched, locked up, the chastity belt, this all-important idea, because it had to be known that the man wants to know it's my child that my wife is carrying, not some other man's child. And so even today in our traditional wedding ceremonies, the woman is dressed in white. White, the conventional symbol for purity, virginity. So you can see the trappings of this patriarchal order everywhere, even in today's society, in our traditions, and of course in our institutions. All the institutions today are still held, still ruled, run by men. The government, the military, businesses, entertainment industry, big powerful industry. This keeps bringing us back to this question: what does Hippolyta think? Does she love Theseus? Has she been awed? Has she been impressed beyond belief by his military strength and bravery on the battlefield? Well, let's look at her words here. I'm at line, what line is this? 7, yes, line 7. She tells Theseus, 4 days will quickly steep themselves in night, 4 nights will quickly dream away the time, and then the moon, like to a silver bow new bent in heaven, shall behold the night of our solemnities. Well, what does she mean here? What exactly is she saying here? And what is she feeling? What is she thinking? This raises a second problem you could explore in your play, and that, again, is a term on your midterm exam. What number is it? Concept number? Well, I don't know. But at any rate, it's called the problem of the other mind, the problems of the other mind. And let me explain this concept to you so you have an understanding of it and can look for it elsewhere in the play. It's the idea of, well, remember when you were little, and you remember the cookie jar in the kitchen, and that cookie jar, it was just filled with lots of goodies, your favorite kinds of cookies and sweets and treats. Oh boy, that was good. But there was a problem. There was a big dragon in front of that cookie jar called your mama or your daddy. And your mama and your daddy said, don't you dare go into that cookie jar before dinner. You will spoil your supper if you do. Don't you dare, when I turn my back, get a cookie from the cookie jar. So what did you do? Well, you waited till the dragon was asleep off somewhere and you stole a cookie from the cookie jar. You took it, you gobbled it down. And they found out about it. They found out about it until one day they asked you, did you take a cookie from the cookie jar? Your mama said, did you eat a cookie from the cookie jar when I told you not to? And you looked at your mama directly in the eye and you said, no, ma'am. I didn't take no cookie from that cookie jar. No, I didn't. And your mama said, that's a good baby. Good baby. Thank you. Thank you for listening to mama. And you learned something that day, didn't you? You learned something very important. And that is that you had a private place right up here. Right up here was a private place where nobody else had access. Nobody else had access to this private place of yours. And you, whatever you thought or whatever you felt, you keep it very quiet and very hidden. And that's the problem, isn't it? Is that we don't have access into other people's heads, into their brains. It's rather very, very disturbing, very frightening thought if you think for a moment and just contemplate that notion that you really are all alone in the world. You are isolated from everyone, no matter how close you get to somebody. Can you ever truly, truly know what's going on in that person's brain, what that person's thinking, what that person's feeling? You don't have access. That's a private place. You can't get through that bolted door. That person wants to keep that door bolted. Well, you're going to have a lot of difficulty finding out what's going on in that head. This idea, this problem of the other mind. This first idea is you just don't have access. You're isolated. We're all alone. We can't know for certain. For certain. Sometimes we can hypothesize or make an educated guess. There may be clues and so forth, but for absolute certainty, and a lot of people want that absolute certainty, we can't know. And so that's a problem, isn't it? And the second problem, of course, is that someone could tell you the truth. You could have go back to this cookie jar. Maybe you didn't take a cookie from the cookie jar. Maybe your baby brother or baby sister took a cookie. And when Mama says, or Daddy says, did you take a cookie from the cookie jar? And you said, no, Mama, I didn't take it. I didn't. Your Mama said, you lied to me. I can tell. You were lying to me. Stop lying. I know you took that cookie. Where is the cookie? Where's the cookie then? I don't know, Mama. I don't know who, but I didn't take it, Mama. I didn't take the cookie. You could be, up and down, you could be swearing. You just didn't take that cookie. And how can your mama know if you're telling the truth or not? Particularly if you lied to her in the past. And see, there's another problem with not having access to the other mind. Can't even know if someone's telling us the truth. There's another Shakespearean play called Othello, and it really revolves around this idea of not being able to know the other mind. Othello imagines he's a number of factors lead to Othello thinking that his wife, Desdemona, has been unfaithful to him. And at one point, he directly demands to know just before he strangles her to death. And she swears, and she hasn't. We know, and sitting in the audience, that she hasn't been unfaithful to him. Spoiler alert, but he doesn't believe her. And so he kills her. It's an enormous problem, not having access to the other mind. Not only do you not know when someone's lying, but you don't know for certain if someone's lying, but you don't know for certain if somebody's telling you the truth. That's rather frightening, kind of disturbing. It's why not lying is so important. Because if you lie, think about it, you can ask people, should you lie? And people say, no, you shouldn't lie, that's wrong. You ask them, well, why shouldn't you lie? Try that tonight. Ask somebody, well, why shouldn't you lie? Most people go, it's just wrong, don't lie. Well, there's a reason why people say don't lie. It's because if you lie to someone, you're giving them an inaccurate understanding of reality. You're giving them a picture that isn't right. It's not true. And if they have in their brains some sort of misconception, if they believe something out there is one way and it's some other way, well, that puts them at risk for not getting it right. Remember, as organisms that can be hurt, that can be harmed, we have to know what's happening around us. If someone says, are those stairs safe? Are you sure I can climb down those stairs? And you were too lazy to fix the broken stair halfway down, and you just embarrassed, and you said, yeah, I fixed it. Now this person has this idea, all right? The brain says these stairs are safe. I've just been told that loose stair has been fixed. and will go down those stairs and then tumble, fall, and who knows what might happen. The person might break her neck, break his neck. So that's why lying, it gives us, that's why it's so important in a civilized world that we not lie to one another, that we not cheat one another of the truth, of reality. Of course, it's not some moral law that should be handed down. Don't lie, thou shalt not lie. That's just silly, isn't it? No, it's you have to think about the idea and scientifically and add the logic together. There are times when you should lie. It's not a question of never lie. You don't owe someone the truth if that person is in some way a threat or a danger. That person doesn't deserve your respect. You don't have to tell that person the truth. Imagine you back during the Civil War, slaves are trying to escape from the South, and they hole up in your house one night, and a slave owner, a slave master comes to the door and wants to know and asks you, are there slaves hiding somewhere in this house? You got slaves in this house hidden somewhere? You don't have to tell that slave owner the truth. You can disrespect that slave owner because that slave owner's got a brain that is broken, is dysfunctional. That slave owner doesn't understand that a brain in pain is a brain in pain. It doesn't matter the color of somebody's skin. It's the brain that can suffer that matters. It's the brain in pain that matters. So what about Apollo? Does she really? Has she fallen for Theseus? I think another reason why Shakespeare probably chose Theseus and Apollo here in this story is because there are two conflicting legends surrounding this couple. One is that yes, Theseus attacked the Amazons, and Apollo was so wowed by this guy's biceps that she fell head over heels. And she fell in love with him and was more than willing to give up her power and give up her crown, give up her influence, her privilege, and her equality as well. Remember, she's giving that up too. She's giving up her political freedom, isn't she? Because she was so in love. I mean, this is the romantic side of the story, isn't it? Because love is all important. It trumps everything else. And so she returns willingly to Athens with Theseus. But the other story is a more realistic story. It says, no, I mean, she was defeated, and the last thing she wanted was to be defeated, to give up all that power and that equality, and to be dominated and ruled by a man, and that she was kidnapped. She was dragged back to Athens against her desire, and was forcibly wed to Theseus. So, can these words tell us? Shakespeare's very careful when he uses these words. Look back at the passage. She says, remember, Theseus says 4 more days. 4, he's counting the days. That's how anxious, that's how eager he is to sexually own this woman. Remember, it's called the master bedroom. The man owns women not only in society, but in the bedroom too, in a patriarchal world. It's the king-size bed. That's the big bed. So he wants to own this woman sexually. He owns her, He owns her, she is his prisoner, but he wants to own her, he wants to, in addition, own her sexually. Of course, I would argue, in his head, he's probably imagining that, he deeply loves her and she deeply loves him. That's a possibility, certainly. At any rate, look what she says, 4 days. Remember, 4 days will quickly steep themselves in night. They'll be swallowed up by night. The days will pass quickly. Yes, because again, during the day, everyone's out and about. They've got business to do. They've got entertainment, activities, something to distract them, to pass the time. So maybe she too is longing for the day to come, and she's just trying to look at this optimistically. Whereas he's frustrated, oh, how slow this old moon wanes. 4 days will quickly steep themselves in night, she says. The night will blanket over the days will be steeped by night, covered, swallowed up by the darkness. Now the nights are a problem for Theseus, not the daytime. But that nighttime, that old moon, how slowly she wanes, you can see him lying in bed, just looking at the clock and counting the seconds now because of his sexual frustration. But what does she say? 4 nights will quickly dream away the time. She's trying to put an optimistic spin on this, isn't she? She's saying, if you're lying in bed awake, just dream about what's to come. And that will send you perhaps even into La La Land, and you can dream away the time that way as well. So just, dream of what's to come. And then the moon, and again, there the moon. The moon is the conventional symbol of romance, of love. And of course, with love comes sex. The goddess of the moon is also a fertility goddess. And at night, remember we've said that nighttime lovers come together. And they come together not only for the romantic, spiritually, but they come together physically as well. And then the moon, like to a silver bow, new bent in heaven. Looks like an error in your text. That should be new bent in heaven. And then the moon, like to a silver bow, new bent in heaven, shall behold the night of our solemnity. So she's imagining the new moon like a silver bow. Remember the moon, when it waxes and wanes, we have the quarter moon, and it looks like a silver bow, new bent in heaven. And of course, that's a sexual symbol, isn't it? That's not a conventional symbol. That's what we call a contextual symbol. It's symbolic only in this particular play, in this particular passage, with the text, contextually. Shakespeare's using it. He's come up with he's not using the moon any longer in a conventional sense, the way everyone would understand it. The moon represents love, it can represent chastity, or it could represent fertility. All these things that the moon can represent. But here, the silver bow, right, new bent in heaven, it's the shape of the vagina, new bent in heaven, will behold the night of our solemnities. And so you have this idea here. I used the board in class here. You really have a sexual symbol here with the silver bow, new bent in heaven. And you even have the suggestion of the hymen, which is all important in a patriarchal world, the string of the bow. It's important that Hippolyta be a virgin, so we know, right, that she's not carrying somebody else's baby. That power and wealth and privilege is going to be handed down from Theseus to my son. It's my son that deserves the wealth, even though he hasn't earned it. So you've got the bow, new bent in heaven, and then of course you have the arrow. And I got this right. I'm not an archer, but you get the idea. The arrow, we're reminded of that sword too, again a phallic symbol. So you have the new moon, new bent in heaven, with the string representing the hymen, representing virginity, and then the moon, of course, the moon of chastity, the goddess of chastity, and then the arrow representing the penis hair. So in one sense we can interpret this, yes, she's ready too. She's so in love with him, and this is true love for her as well. So it's not just that she and Theseus are true soulmates, but it's also that they physically desire one another. And that brings up an interesting point too. Romantics believe that the sexual act is not just a union of two bodies, but it's a union of spirit. And in that sense, it's seen as the epitome of it's the idea of consummating the marriage. The sexual act for the romantic is seen as the ultimate expression of one's love for one's soulmate, because it isn't just the physical act. Whereas the realist is going to say, no, it's the physical act. Pardon me. And the reason that you're you're having sex with the reality behind it is that this person is someone who you're sexually attracted to. Remember, it's fair Hippolyta. And Theseus finds her physically appealing. And it also is feeding your ego when you're having sex, right? It's the idea that you're the winner. You found someone who finds you sexually attractive and feeds your ego. And then also the cultural upbringing. Everybody, has been fallen victim to this idea that love is the epitome of all emotions. It's the zenith. Love is the orgasm of all emotions, if you will. We even have a national holiday in honor of love called Valentine's Day. So this is what's happened. You've been raised to believe that what you're experiencing is mystical and magical and mysterious. And the realist would say, no, this is what your society believes because your culture, most of the people around you, they've been raised to think this way because most people view this world through these rose-colored romantic lenses. They don't see the world. They don't have 20/20 vision, do they? Their vision is somehow disturbed. Their vision is myopic. They're nearsighted, if you will, and they're looking at the world through these rose-colored glasses. So that's what's going on here. But here we certainly have a romantic interpretation. Shall behold the night of our solemnities. And this word solemnities, of course, underscores this romantic notion that marriage and all that it promises is a solemn occasion. And again, today, most marriages, perhaps, I don't know, don't quote me on this, but many marriages are still held in religious institutions, houses of religion, to underscore this idea that it is a sacred, solemn bond that whatever God has designed in advance and that has blessed this couple and will protect this couple, and that their union is a holy union, it's a holy matrimony, and no man has the right, no one has the right to disrupt or to break or this couple's union. So this is the romantic take, but maybe it's maybe we could read this same passage and think differently. Look what she's saying. Maybe she's just trying to placate Theseus. He is getting kind of frisky here, isn't he? He might even be drawing her towards him, hugging her, pulling her in closely, talking about how she lingers my desires. And it's maybe the idea down, boy, back, down. And she says, 4 days, remember now, 4 days will quickly steep themselves in night. 4 nights will quickly dream away the time. And notice that repetition of the word quickly. She's trying to encourage him, repeating this word quickly. It'll go by fast enough. Don't worry, don't fret. Back off a little bit, down. Give me a little breathing space here. And then the moon like to a silver bow new bent in heaven. And now this image, what is she really saying here? A silver bow new bent in heaven. Well, now we remember that she was she's a queen of the Amazon. She's skilled at archery. And the hunting here, the idea that she's a hunter of men. She kills men. She attacks men, destroys. She wishes to destroy the patriarchal order. And this, perhaps, she's in her mind, her imagination. She has 4 days. She has 4 days to scheme, to plot, to plan, to perhaps find some way, if she can put this marriage off, to perhaps find some way that she can make her escape, or even after the marriage. But definitely, I would probably say before, because she doesn't want to be possessed physically by this man, this realistic interpretation. She does not love Theseus. She abhors him. She despises him. He's her arch enemy. She sees him on the side of evil. And this patriarchal order is wicked. And so she's plotting and planning inside her brain. We don't have access into her brain, so how can we know? She's plotting, she's planning, she's determining, she's thinking. Perhaps she can escape. Perhaps she can raise an army again of the Amazons who are still living. She can return to her tribe and raise an army and attack Theseus and defeat him once and for all. And so this idea, this is what's on her mind here when she uses the simile, like to a silver bow, new bent in heaven. This will be a new attack, a fresh assault, new bent in heaven. And even that idea of heaven, because I would argue she's a romantic too, isn't she? This idea that heaven will be on her side this time. That ultimately she may have lost now, but the forces of good and evil, the war isn't over yet. The battle isn't over yet. It's still being waged because she is not defeated. She's simply biding her time. She's scheming. She's using her intelligence here to scheme, to plot, to plan. Maybe she even plans to murder Theseus with a knife in the back behind a closed door. You could interpret it that way. There's nothing in these words. One way, she's fallen in love with him, head over heels. She just can't help herself. But the other way, no. Not at all. She's been kidnapped against her desires, against her wishes. And now she finds herself in a very precarious situation. And she's got to think, how can she escape? How can she rise back and assume the throne of power again, become the queen of the Amazons, and finally in the last battle, defeat her arch enemy? That could be how we interpret the play. The problem of the other mind. Why is this a problem, particularly for lovers? Well, again, Shakespeare is undermining this romantic view. Remember the romantic. Romantic meets someone and believes that there's a special connection between these two people. My honey bunny is special. And I'm special in that honey bunny's eyes because this was foreordained. This was predestined. And this just isn't a union, a physical union. It's a union of souls, of spirits. This is my soul mate. That's how close we are. And you see when people first fall in love with one another, you see they just can't leave each other's sight. And you might have even heard someone turn, or maybe you yourself have used the expression, "Wow, she knows everything I think. She knows the thought I'm thinking before I even say it out loud. She can," or she says, "He can finish my sentences for me. He knows before I even speak what I'm going to say." Or they'll say, "Oh my goodness, we both had the same idea at once, and that's why we met here. This isn't a coincidence. We're connected telepathically. There's something magical, mysterious going on between our minds." Because remember, romantics believe in a mind. They don't believe it's just a brain. They believe there's something non-physical in here. Not just a physical brain, but a mind, something separate, distinct, a soul, a spirit, something mysterious and magical that's non-physical. It's operating in here just behind the eyeballs. That's what they believe. That's what romantics think. And Shakespeare's undermining once again this idea. Theseus thinks he loves Hippolyta and thinks she loves him. But can he really know what she thinks? Shakespeare leaves it open to us in the audience. If we're, if we're keen enough, if we're a clear-sighted observer here, we can see. We can think about the backdrop, the backstory here. We can think about Hippolyta, imagine, identify with her, put ourselves in her situation. We say, yeah, this is open to either interpretation. So the romantic believes there is this connection of minds. Really? And well, you can imagine two romantics. At first, they believe they have this connection, but then imagine about 6 weeks into the relationship, and the two are driving home from a party. You're driving home. Imagine you're driving home from a party one night with Honey Bunny, and the two of you are romantics, and you've been together for about 6 weeks now, but tonight, things aren't going too smoothly. The course of true love's just not running smoothly tonight, is it? Because Honey Bunny's awfully quiet there at the party, sitting there in the seat, and you turn to Honey Bunny and say, "Honey, are you okay?" And Honey Bunny says, "Yep, nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong." And you say, "Honey, are you sure nothing's wrong? Are you sure?" "I said nothing's wrong. Nothing is wrong." Okay. And you wait a minute. "Are you sure?" "Nothing is wrong." And you get back to the house. And suddenly Honey Bunny hops out of the car and bam, that car door slams. And you hear Honey Bunny stomping up the sidewalk and bam, that front door slams. And then you hear Honey Bunny stomping up the stairs to the bedroom and bam, that bedroom door slams. And then you hear Honey Bunny stomping to the bathroom and bam, that bathroom door slams. And then you hear all the locks on the bathroom door click, 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 boop, 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 being bolted. Very gingerly and very quietly and very, very carefully, you creep up to the bathroom door and you rap on the door. "Honey, are you sure there's nothing wrong?" And Honey Bunny, then you hear click, unclick, 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 and the door flings open and there's Honey Bunny with a shotgun. Bam! "I told you nothing's wrong." What's going on here? Honey Bunny's a romantic. Something's wrong with Honey Bunny. And if you don't know what it is, then that's a failure on your part. You should know. You should be able to read Honey Bunny's mind. You should know that's how close the two of you are. And if you don't know what the problem is, and something's gone wrong with the relationship, you just don't love me anymore. This is not true love because you can't read my mind. You don't know what's wrong. Something happened at the party. I don't know. Maybe you flirted with someone who wasn't Honey Bunny. Innocent flirtation, perhaps. Perhaps not. But it's upset Honey Bunny. And if you don't know what it is that's upset Honey Bunny, well, it's over. The relationship is ended. That's a deal breaker. Because Honey Bunny is a romantic. And you should be able to read Honey Bunny's mind. No, Shakespeare's saying, that's not reality. And he illustrates that here with Hippolyta. What is her true response? What are her real feelings here concerning the relationship she now has with Theseus? Let's take a moment and we shall return. And I have returned once more, and let's turn from Theseus and Hippolyta's relationship to Lysander and Hermia's relationship. And I'm on page 1342 in your anthology. I'm still in Act 1, Scene 1, but we'll get there. I'm at line... Oh no, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I'm on page 1340, still in Act 1, Scene 1, but I am now at line 46. And you know the backstory here. Hermia loves Lysander, but Aegeus refuses Hermia to to wed Lysander, and Aegeus prefers Demetrius. Demetrius also loves Lysander. Well, let's use the word love. Every time I use the word love now, let's think about what that really means. let's use the word desire, shall we? So Hermia desires Lysander. Lysander desires Hermia. Everything's working smoothly for them, right? But there's a problem. There's an obstacle in the way, an external obstacle here in the way, isn't there? And that is that Hermia's daddy, Aegeus, he just don't like Lysander. We can speculate why. It's probably that Lysander hasn't gone through the proper channels in courting Hermia. In those days, and still in many families, many households today, if a young man is interested in a young boy is interested in a young girl, he's got to ask the daddy for permission to court her. He can't just ride up on his Honda, right, flashing his tattoos and said, "Come on, baby, hop on. Forget your daddy." But Lysander's pretty much done that, hasn't he? I mean, he's just showed up and beneath Hermia's balcony. At nighttime, of course, Lysander's a romantic underneath the moon and the stars, and he sings songs to her, and probably plays the guitar. Or maybe if he's from Alabama, I don't know, maybe he's playing the banjo. I don't know, what did they play in Athens? He's probably playing what is that called? The lyre? Yeah. Or is it called a lyre? Can it be pronounced either way? I'm not sure. You'll have to look that up. But he's probably playing one of those string instruments, wooing Hermia, and she's on the balcony. We're reminded of Romeo and Juliet, aren't we? He's giving her all kinds of little trinkets and rings and sparkly things, and he's written her love poetry. Imagine he's writing sonnets. The sonnet, of course, is the traditional love poem. So I don't know what kind of sonneteer he is, but he is a romantic, and so Hermia's fallen for Lysander, Lysander's fallen for Hermia. Of course, they're young. It's probably, I would imagine Hermia's about Juliet's age from Romeo and Juliet. Hermia's probably about 13 or 14, because remember, nature, at that age when women begin to menstruate and they're ready to have children, in Shakespeare's day, you didn't live particularly long, so you began early. Now we see there's a problem with that. But at any rate, yeah, I think Hermia is probably about 13 or 14, maybe 15 or 16. And then Lysander, I imagine, a few years older. So they're young. This is probably the first time that a boy has paid any attention to Hermia. And of course, Hermia's hormones have kicked in, so she's sexually aroused by the young man. And as I said, it's probably the first little boy that's paid her any attention. So he's stroking her ego, isn't he? I mean, she's suddenly feeling kind of special and important. And I don't know, Aegeus seems like a rather authoritarian, dictatorial father, a kind of petty tyrant. So maybe she hasn't had much affection or attention at home. She is a girl after all. And so in a patriarchal world, she's can easily be dismissed. She's not that important. But here's this young man, this young boy, let's call him, because I imagine it would be about Romeo's age, 16, 17, maybe 18. But at any rate, and this is the first boy who's paid her much attention. And of course, it's making her feel, oh, I'm special. Look, somebody likes me. I'm not a loser anymore. And so yeah, her ego's at play. And of course, the culture she's been raised in. She's been raised in this idea of true love. And, they're writing love, the idea of true love, writing love poetry. I mean, it's everywhere, as I said, in our music today, and then back then, I'm sure as well. The music, today we have it everywhere, in our movies and television. And as I said, we have holidays celebrating love, Valentine's Day. So yeah, he's her first Valentine. And so she's bought into this idea that love is special. She is a romantic. She does believe in the gods. So Lysander has not, as I said, he's not followed protocol. He's not done what's expected of young men to do, and that is to ask the father for permission. That's what I would imagine. Sounds like that's what he's done. Whereas Demetrius has gone through the proper channels, and that's probably why Aegeus prefers Demetrius to Lysander. Of course, there could be other reasons, and I'll leave those other reasons for you to think of. So yeah, let's turn to their relationship and this obstacle, this patriarchal world they're living in, where the daddy has all the power. In fact, he has the power to put his daughter to death if she disobeys him. I mean, you honored your father and mother, and you did what they told you to do. You don't sass back. Who do you think you are? As long as you're under my roof, you gonna do as I say. Otherwise, get out. So some people today, modern audience today, I mean, this is just a hard notion for them to imagine that a daddy is going to have his daughter put to death if she disobeys him. But I would argue that even today, I don't know, that may actually happen in some cultures, but in our culture, if the parents find the young man objectionable, as I said, I don't know, some people might find if the parents don't like the young man for whatever reason it might be, they will tell, they could tell, many have, they will tell their daughter, get out of my house, you are dead to me. You are no longer my daughter. Out. You are dead to me. So they may not literally behead their daughters, chop their heads off, as Aegeus wants to do here. But figuratively speaking, that's what they do. And they may not speak ever again for the rest of their lives with their own daughter, to their own daughter or son. I mean, it certainly has happened. So this obstacle, this is an ironic place to find an obstacle, isn't it? It underscores this, there's a kind of irony in familial love, family love. Remember we said my family, I love my family's important. You could talk about family in A Midsummer Night's Dream. How are families being portrayed in this dream, this play? Because I would argue here that Shakespeare's saying, yeah, this familial love, along with that comes this expectations, and particularly between the parent believes that the child is his possession. He owns that child, and we've seen it's quite a struggle for children to have rights in our society even today. It's difficult to know what's going on behind closed doors in the family unit too, many times. So that's an interesting topic you might wish to explore. So look what Theseus says to Hermia. I mean, Hermia's been given a choice. Either you marry Demetrius or you be beheaded. That's what Aegeus says. But Theseus steps in and gives her a third option. He says, well, if you refuse to marry Demetrius, either be beheaded or you can spend the rest of your life in a nunnery. That's interesting, a nunnery, because this is not a Christian world we're living in, is it? This is ancient Greece. We're in ancient Athens, and this is hundreds of years before before Christianity appeared on the planet. And yet Shakespeare, and several places in the play, and we'll see later in the play, particularly with the famous passage called Bottom's Dream, that Shakespeare quite often refers indirectly, in this case more directly, but it's never overtly stated, is it? But yeah, he brings in the Christian religion along with the ancient Greece, and he also brings in the ancient Roman religion. And some critics, or some people perhaps, might think that this is an error on Shakespeare's part, that he's simply forgotten, hey, I'm writing about ancient Greece, and there are no nunneries in ancient Greece. I don't think that's it. And some people imagine, some critics imagine, that Shakespeare's simply using his poetic license, that it suits his needs, his purposes, he needs a third option here. So, he's a poet, he's got a license as a poet, he knows what he's doing, and he's doing it simply to move this, let's say, for example, to move the plot forward, etc. That could be one reason, but I don't think it's that either. I mean, to me, it's, and we'll talk in more detail about it next time, but he's trying to link this belief in the supernatural in the belief many of the ancient Greeks held. Not all of the ancient Greeks believed in the gods, but the ancient Greeks, many of them, most of them, were romantics. They were polytheists. They believed in many gods. Poly is the Greek prefix for many. But there were some, of course, atheists. A meaning without a belief in a god. Theism means the belief in a god or gods. And an atheist is someone without the belief in a god or gods. But and then the ancient Romans, they were polytheists. They believed in the Roman gods. They really appropriated the Greek gods. Zeus, the king of gods, becomes Jupiter in Roman mythology. But in Shakespeare's day, of course, most of the people, again, are romantics, and most of them are Christians sitting in the audience. So Shakespeare wants to link these religions together, I would argue, when he turns to this question of the supernatural, the problem of the supernatural that we'll discuss in the next lecture. So I'm just, in case any of you were wondering, this third option of nunnery, and you realized, ancient Greece, there were no nunneries in ancient Greece. So Theseus does give her the third option, and he says, "What say you, Hermia?" I'm at line 46 on page 1340, Act 1, Scene 1. "What say you, Hermia? Be advised, fair maid." You hear the authority in Theseus' voice. Remember, Theseus is the state father. He has a lot of power. He rules over the state, over Athens, the city-state. "Be advised, fair maid. To you, your father should be as a god. To you, your father should be as a god, one that composed your beauties, yea, and one to whom you are but as a form in wax, by him imprinted, and within his power to leave the figure or disfigure it." That's quite a disturbing image, isn't it? And look at the simile first, Of course, you hear the authority in his voice. I mean, he is assuming control. Remember that Hippolytus is standing next to Theseus. Theseus, again, he's pluming up his feathers, showing his bride-to-be, the former queen of the Amazons, that he's in control here. And he is the authority of the state. He has the power. It may be one of the reasons why he gives Hermia a third option, to show that Aegeus doesn't have the power here. Theseus says that there's a patriarchal law that even Theseus himself must follow. But I wonder, this is the first time I thought about this, I wonder if part of the patriarchal law was this third option of a nunnery. It may be that here Theseus is exerting his authority over the law itself. Remember, the patriarchal law handed down by the patriarchs, the very rich, wealthy men, who claimed that their authority came from the gods, from the Heavenly Father in particular, from Zeus. So the idea is no one is above the law, not even Theseus, the state father. But here we'll see later in the play that Theseus does break the patriarchal law. And again, I would argue he's doing that to show that he's the alpha here. He's even above the law. But no one is supposed to break the rule of law, particularly in a democracy where the rules have been laid down, by the people, supposedly. Again, the irony. Athens is an aristocracy, not a democracy. And a patriarchal aristocracy. this idea of a god, it may give him, he says, Theseus says that Aegeus, that Hermia should see Aegeus as a god, with an all-powerful, an all-knowing God, an all-loving God, and that Aegeus is doing this only in her best interest. He knows better. Aegeus, her daddy, knows better. He's the authority. He's the all-powerful figure. He's the all-knowing figure, and he's all-loving. He loves his daughter, and he's only threatening her here because he knows what's best for her, and that Lysander is not worthy. In Aegeus's head, in Aegeus's brain, Lysander is not worthy of the name of Aegeus. Remember, Aegeus, it appears he doesn't have a son. And of course, in a patriarchal world, that means you fail if you don't have a son. Because it's the son who takes the family name, the last name, the surname. And the daughter doesn't. The daughter takes the man's name. You even see that today in our culture. Many, if not most women, if they marry, they generally speaking, yes, they take the man's last name. I mean, some women will hyphenate their names, the two last names. Their family name and their husband's family name. You very rarely, I would imagine, you see a man hyphenating his last names. But it's still the idea that it's the male that matters. It's the genes, if you will, are passed down through the male line. It's the male who inherits the power, the privilege, the wealth, the importance. And so it's his name that matters. And Aegeus doesn't have a son. It doesn't appear that there's no evidence in the text to support that he has a son. All he has is a daughter. All he has is a daughter. How devastating. I mean, even today, some families, they'll keep trying until they have a son because it's just not enough. Some men still, their egos, and they've been raised in this patriarchal world where it says it's important that you have sons to pass on the family name, to pass your genes. It's kind of irrational thinking, of course. You can see the bias and sexism in that, but Aegeus has only Hermia. So the only thing Aegeus can do, he does have the power. He doesn't have a son that he can pass his wealth and privilege and power down to. But he does have the power to choose a son-in-law. And, it's the next best thing. It's may not be, it's close. I mean, it's no cigar, as the saying goes, but it's close. Yeah. It's the best Aegeus can do at this point. So when Hermia threatens to take that power away from him by marrying Lysander, I mean, alarm bells go off. And he's ready to accuse Lysander of being a thief, of being a witch, of putting his daughter under a spell, of stealing her, of corrupting her mind. He uses all of these metaphors in this long monologue he has before the Duke. And so this idea that he should be as a god, you don't question the god, you do as the god tells you, particularly the male god here. He composed your beauties. He's a creator God, isn't he? He created you. He composed your beauties. You owe all that you have. Interesting, the emphasis on beauty here, isn't it? It may mean more than just physical beauties. It may be in the figurative sense. All of her beauties, whatever they may be, her honesty, perhaps. Certainly in a patriarchal world, her chastity, that's all important, that she's a virgin. Maybe her intelligence, these sorts of things. Does Theseus know her this well? I don't know. In a patriarchal world, though, I've sort of leaned toward this idea that he's focused on her physical beauties. All your beauties, your lovely hair, and your pretty eyes, and your sparkling teeth, and your, lovely shape and figure, and so forth. Theseus, he is a ladies' man, a lady killer, isn't he? I mean, he's always, we find out later in the play, he's always, on the prowl. He's quite the playboy. One that composed your beauties, yea, and one by him to whom you are but as a form in wax. Notice the worthlessness here. It's just a form in wax. And it's he it's the Father that imprints on the form in wax, by him imprinted. You almost get the idea that in the idea of the creative process, the magical process of creation. Poof! He created you. You came into existence magically, through procreation. And the idea of the figure in wax, you almost get the idea that the mother, Hermie's mother, had nothing to do with this. She's just, she's just the vessel in which you find the wax, and it's the Father who imprints his image, the penis that's inserted into the vessel, and imprints its image on the form in wax. In other words, Hermia is in the image of her father, and she should be like her father. She should listen to him. And he has the power. It's within his power. He can leave the figure, or he can disfigure it. And that term disfigure, that image of a wax that has been shaped and molded and created into this beauty, he's composed your beauties. She's like a work of art out of wax that's been composed in this lovely form and figure, and however you imagine that to be. And he has the power to disfigure the work of art he's created, to rip it apart. That's within his power. Because he created her, therefore he has the power to destroy her, because she is possessed by him. So this is a third cause. I think you can explore a third disturbing element in the play that you can trace through the play, and you can use this example here. This idea of these external obstacles that get in the way of lovers. And some of them are very high hurdles to, very tall mountains to cross, very large mountain ranges to travel over, to surmount. And here we have, the irony here is it's by a father who, again, remember this romantic view of love, and we just assume, right, that the father's love for his daughter. And here it sounds as if Jesus is more in love, if you will, again that word. He's more desirous of maintaining his reputation, his ego, his power, his authority. That's what comes first. And he's willing to harm his daughter, even to the point of having her beheaded, if he doesn't get his way. It's his psychology, raised in this patriarchal world. Women don't. They don't, daughters especially, they don't sass back. They do as they're told. And they should be seen and not heard. This idea here. So this obstacle confronts Hermia and Lysander. It's sort of a catalyst for the plot to follow, isn't it? But there are other external obstacles. Let's turn to page 1342. And before we do, let's take a break, and I shall return in just a moment or two. And I am back. And let's see, we were on page 1342. We're turning to page 1342 in your anthology, Act 1, Scene 1 still. And now I'm at line 132, the conversation between Lysander, the dialogue between Lysander and Hermia. Everyone else has left the stage. And, look at Lysander and Hermia. They're both in this really deep funk, a blue funk. I mean, they are just so dispirited and so downhearted, they cannot fight the law. And they've got not only Aegeus, the family father figure, the authority figure to contend with, but now they have Theseus, the state father. Because, Theseus, he gives her the option of a nunnery, but that means for Hermia, that means that might as well be death for Hermia. Remember, in her eyes, if she doesn't have Lysander, her life is over. She's only 13, 14. This is puppy love. She can't imagine life without Lysander. We would call Romeo and Juliet, when Romeo believes Juliet to be dead, well, that's it. He's exiting the stage. And then when Juliet wakes and finds Romeo dead, well, she's right on his heels. She can't get off that stage fast enough. She even takes a quicker means. Hermia, the idea, death or a nunnery, if she goes into a nunnery, you know what that means for her. That means she's not going to have access to Lysander for the rest of her life. Right? She's going to be praying, she's going to be worshiping another god, not Lysander. She's going to be worshiping the Christian God in a nunnery. And she's going to have to remain virginal and chaste her whole life, too. She won't be, those hormones that are coursing through her bloodstream. She's not going to be able to act on those with her one true love. And she's going to be separated from him. You can just imagine her ego just deflates. I mean, all the air goes out of her tire because she was just ready to cruise on down that highway of love, wasn't she? Now you can see all 4 tires on the car of love just falling right off the axes. And, the carburetor exploded, the engine catching on fire. I mean, this is just tragedy for these two. And look at what Lysander says here. So, going into a nunnery, it may not be a literal death for Hermia, but it certainly is a figurative death. Because if you can't be with the one you love the one you with. No, that's not true love. That's just not how these two young lovers are thinking. It's either all or nothing. There is no in between. There is no nunnery. I mean, she accepts to go into the nunnery, but, she doesn't really have a choice here, does she? She's being forced against her desires, obviously. And this idea that they're going to escape and flee, and in doing so risk their lives. Again, this romantic notion that they see themselves, they can attain that happy ending, and they are willing to die to attain that ending. That's this romantic idea of the willingness to die for love. And that too will be undermined throughout the play. Or in several places in the play. Well, pretty much throughout the play. But Lysander, too, is quite disheartened, totally dispirited. And look what he says here. And here I'm exploring this again, this third cause, this third problem. Lovers confront the external obstacles, the obstacles in the world. The irony here is this was coming from her own daddy, who should love her and should want the best for her. But it's not a question of he should want the best for her, it's the question of father knows best. So at any rate, if you were to write an essay on the patriarchal order in the play, there's a title, Father Knows Best. All right. At any rate, at line 132, look what Lysander says. Hi, me. Oh, you could just hear the despair. You see the exclamation point. I mean, this young man's just, he's collapsing. You can imagine, how excited he was before, and now it's just taken all the oomph out of his, he's just crestfallen, isn't he? Hi, me. For aught that I could ever read, could ever hear by tale or history, the course of true love never did run smooth. And obviously you see the kind of world that Lysander's been raised in. I mean, back then they don't have TV, they don't have the movies, they don't have the music, but they do have books. And you know what this guy loves to read. He reads these tales of romance, the tales of knights in shining armor, or rescuing the damsels in distress, or the balladeers playing to their, to the lady at court. These are the tales he reads of love, tales and histories and legends. I mean, he's just fed on this. It's everywhere around him in this culture. And he's just eating it up. He's fed on it. And he's addicted to this idea of true love. He believes it exists. Because this is what, he's just sucked all this up, and it's just, in his young head, he's not questioning what he's being told. He's just believing what all these books are. It'd be interesting, Lysander's interpretation of this story, Midsummer Night's Dream. That would make an interesting creative essay, wouldn't it? But at any rate, the course of true love never did run smooth. And that's one of the most famous lines in the play. Everybody quotes that line. So, when you go out on a date, impress your potential honey bunny for life. Say, let's just keep in mind, honey bunny, that the course of true love, it don't always run smooth. So, at any rate, the course of true love never did run smooth. So you can see him, he's very distressed, but he's trying to pick himself up. Everything he's read about, there are these obstacles that get in the way, that confront these lovers, that these lovers have to leap over. There are these dragons they have to fight. But they can defeat the dragons. It doesn't run smooth, and he does buy into. Look, he uses the expression true love. He believes in true love. And again, I've taken pains over an hour to show you that Shakespeare is questioning this idea, this romantic view of true love. He wants to show us what the reality of it is. And again, we've talked about the realities for Lysander and Hermia. They're young. They're sexually aroused. They're sexually aroused. It's feeding their egos. They've been raised to believe that you're nobody, baby, unless somebody loves you. You're nobody unless somebody cares. That's how they've been raised to believe. That's the cultural addiction. And here we see it. Shakespeare's at pains to show us what true love really is here. It's this cultural upbringing, this brainwashing, this indoctrination of the importance, and that it actually exists, and that it's all important, and that you're ready to die for it. The course of true love never did run smooth. He is sinking deeply into the swamp of pessimism here. The crocodiles are swimming around and ready to chew him up to bits. Look what he says. He goes even deeper and deeper into the swamp. But either it was different in blood, this idea that someone, if you're not from the same class, what do they call it in here? Hereditary rank. They believed in blue bloods, and I don't know if they did in ancient Greece, but certainly in Shakespeare's time, in Elizabethan time, they still had kings and queens over there. They still believe some people are born special. That's rather frightening, isn't it? But this idea that, someone of the upper class, someone of the lower class, that might cause a problem, a rift in the relationship between children and their parents. Imagine bringing someone home from the wrong side of the tracks. A gold digger, perhaps, or a worthless bum. So that could be an external obstacle. And look at Hermia's response. Oh, cross, too high to be enthralled to low. There's another interesting, indirect way that Shakespeare's reminding us. Shakespeare is writing for a largely, predominantly Christian audience, and here the cross is the traditional Christian symbol of suffering. Their God, Christians believe, Orthodox Christianity teaches children that their God suffered for their sins, the sins that, his creation, the sins that they commit, and excuse them as long as they maintain their faith. So the cross, the pain, the agony that you experience in life, you ought to bear that cross and suffer. You ought to to emulate the Christian God, to bear the suffering. That's why, for example, as we'll see in Hamlet, that suicide is frowned on by Orthodox traditional Christianity. Is the idea that you are a coward to take your own life. You come on, you can take that pain, you can take that suffering, no matter how much we lay on you. Only your God created you, and only your God has the power to take your life. So, quite sadistic, the idea that you are to suffer. And that's the idea in love too, isn't it, here? I mean, the love for the God, the love for one another. We are to suffer through this, Lysander, no matter how bad it gets. We need to take that pain, baby. No matter how we ratchet up that pain, we need to suffer through it. Oh, cross, too high to be enthralled to low. What an awful obstacle, that your parents, your society won't allow you to come together because that person is not of your class. I mean, even today you see that. You can imagine people of wealth and privilege, someone of the working class coming into their world. I mean, many of them would have a problem with that, I would argue. A lot of prejudice, but not between the classes, really, right? Poor, middle class, working class, the upper class. We are a class society, aren't we? It's many times hard to see that because we are segregated as classes. Rich live in closed communities, and the working class in the suburbs, and the poor are now, left behind in the slums, the urban slums of the cities, off where we can't see, the working class can't see, and off where we can't see the rich and powerful. So, yeah, it's difficult for some of us to imagine we're living in a class system, but yes. And then he says, or else misgraft in respect of years. Yeah, did I read that? Misgrafted. Or else misgrafted in respect of years. Yeah. I mean, imagine showing up at the doorstep with me, Mr. Starkey in tow, and saying, hey, Ma, hey, Daddy, this is the man I love, who just happens to be 62 years old. Yeah, there might be a problem. What are they going to think of me? This idea of the age difference, a lot of people, that upsets them. I mean, we are biased when it comes to age too, aren't we? Yeah, we really are. Young people don't want to hang out with Mom and Daddy. Most of them don't. They want to hang out with young people. And middle-aged people, they don't want to be in the bars any longer, the nightclubs, unless they're desperate, I guess, or imagine. And then, the elderly, we just remove them from society altogether. They're like wicked witches we don't want to look at. We put them away where we don't have to, oh no, that's too frightening. So, yeah, I mean, we're segregated in age too, aren't we, really, if you think about it. But at any rate, this idea, the family, the difference in years, that can be a problem for many families. Oh, spite, Hermia responds, too old to be engaged too young. And then Lysander says, or else it stood upon the choice of friends. Yeah, I mean, that's a problem. I mean, many of you probably you have a best friend, let's say, or a couple best friends. And suddenly, you show up to lunch one day with your new honey bunny. And just because you think Honey Bunny's adorable, you think Honey Bunny looks like Brad Pitt, and that he's got the charm of, I don't know, who in history, some Don Juan. I mean, they make your friends, your bestest of friends, your Facebook buddies even. They might see this guy and think, oh my, what a jackass. He even looks like a jackass. And he is a jackass. And so, there can be a rift in the friendship. And some friendships are very close. We're going to see Hermia and Helena. Their friendship is very close, and yet their friendship is going to be torn asunder because of the conflicts between these four young lovers, Demetrius and Helena and Hermia and Lysander. There's going to be quite a bit of conflict here, and their friendship is going to suffer because of it. Friendship in a Midsummer Night's Dream. Be a good essay to write on. At any rate, her response to this is, oh hell, to choose love by another's eyes. Imagine your best friend saying, oh no, you don't want him. Look, I got the perfect guy for you. I got the perfect gal for you. This is who you should date. And if you don't date this person, something's wrong with you, and I want nothing more to do with it. Yeah, I mean, it can happen. But then something even more, and Lysander's sort of, he's sort of like the anti-cheerleader here. He just gets, one obstacle after another. It just gets darker and darker and gloomier and gloomier. I mean, you can imagine there was this movie with Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy, and she's playing tennis. She's a tennis player, a professional tennis player, and sometimes she panics if her honey bunny's watching her in the audience, and the net, when he's watching her, she can't play. She's a good player, but she can't play when he's looking at her. She becomes too self-conscious. And you see the net in her imagination getting higher and higher and higher and higher, and she just can't get that ball over the net. But here you can see the hurdles that Lysander's putting in front of himself and in front of Hermia, and those hurdles just keep getting higher, bigger, bigger, bigger. No lover's going to be able to jump over them. And look what he says, or if there were a sympathy and choice, if everybody's in agreement, everybody's happy, mama, daddy, your friends, oh yeah, everything's cool, yeah, oh great, like that young man, like that young woman, absolutely, welcome to the family. Even if that works, what does Lysander say next? Or if there were some sympathy and choice, war, death, or sickness did lay siege to it. That battle imagery, the war that's laying siege, conquering it, destroying it, annihilating it. And this is a brutal truth, isn't it? Part of the reality. War separates lovers, often for good. Sickness separates lovers, oftentimes for good. Death, of course, separates lovers for good. Unless, of course, they believe in perhaps in this supernatural realm for which there's zero evidence. So war, death, sickness did lay siege to it. And here we have another problem. These obstacles, sickness and war, if they end in death and death itself, they can't be overcome. Not in this realistic view of the world. This is, you could find Honey Bunny, and everybody could be happy. And the next moment, war, death, sickness could lay siege to your happiness, could penetrate the walls of your fortress, your city of love, and could plunder and pillage and rape and destroy your romance. And this obstacle leads to this fear. I mean, imagine the fear of loss, the fear of losing the one you love, the fear of losing your honey bunny, the fear of, you could extend this to the fear of those who are close to you, become attached to psychologically, emotionally, you become addicted to, they're familiar to you, and you're dependent on them. They're there to support and comfort and boost your ego and sense of, self and, lift your esteem. And imagine losing them. But particularly here is the idea of losing that honey bunny. I'm always reminded here, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but of The Wizard of Oz. That's a very disturbing, frightening film. I remember watching it as a child, 5 or 6 years old, and couldn't imagine why my parents let me watch this film, because particularly the scene, I always remember this. I don't know if I was 5 or 6, I was maybe a little bit older, 7 or 8. But I always remember the scene where the witch and her monkeys and the guards, they cornered Dorothy and Dorothy's friends, the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Cowardly Lion, and Toto too. And they cornered them. They're trapped. And the witch comes in and she looks at Dorothy and she says, "The last to go will see the first 3 go before her, and her little dog too." And the horror of that, the idea, because Dorothy has grown very attached, she's very close to the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Cowardly Lion, and of course to her Toto, her doggy. And the idea that now she's going to watch her friends and her doggy be destroyed in front of her. And when the Wicked Witch lights the Scarecrow up, he begins to burn, to imagine the horror, the suffering of watching her good, close friend that she loves, watching him burn to death, burn up. I mean, it was just a horrific moment for me. Fortunately, we're in a romantic comedy. The witch is destroyed. Dorothy saves the day. Unwittingly, of course, to realize the water will melt the Wicked Witch. But nevertheless, that was a frightening moment. And it reminds us of the tragic pessimist here who says nobody's going to win this game of love. You're not going to come out on top. Because in the end, if you live long enough, you're going to have to watch that honey bunny perhaps suffer a very brutal death. And if you live long enough, you could extend this if you're writing on the family in A Midsummer Night's Dream, perhaps, or just this idea of love in general, of a familial love or friendship. This is the idea, you live long enough, you can watch everybody you love, you care for, that you become addicted to. You can watch them all go. Right? You can watch your mama, your daddy, your brother, your sister, your doggy, your kitty cat, your best friend forever, and your honey bunny. This is a dark moment in the play. It's hard to keep imagining that this is a light, bright, sparkling comedy, romantic comedy. War, death, or sickness did lay siege to it, making it momentary, right? Making true love, making it momentary as a sound. Just for a moment. True love lasts just for a moment. Momentary as a sound, swift as a shadow. Just for a moment the shadow passes. The shadow of true love. Swift as a shadow, short as any dream. Right? By the time you wake up, the dream's over. You didn't even realize you were dreaming until it's over. Brief as the lightning in the colleague night. Look at all of these images, these similes. This is what true love is, he's saying. It's brief, it's momentary, just like these natural elements. Lightning is a natural element. And the thunder that claps with the lightning is a natural element. It's produced by energy bits and matter bits. Natural element, over in a flash, over in a moment. Sound, lightning, shadows, energy and matter bits again. Dreams, energy and matter bits again. All of this is part of nature. And nature says it ain't going to last. It's going to be over sooner than you think. And it could happen at any moment. Most romantics imagine they're going to finish their story. They're going to get to, Prince Charming's going to arrive at the door, and there's the glass slipper. And that glass slipper's going to fit. And then they're going to move off into the mansion, right, somewhere in Beverly Hills, and live happily ever after in the magical kingdom afterwards. Disneyland in the sky. Right? They imagine the story completing, but sometimes the story ends abruptly. That's just the facts. The scientific evidence is there for us to see. And that's what, this is part of the natural world. And those are the similes that Lysander's thinking of. He's really, he's thinking of the tragic plot line now. He's no longer, when he first fell in love with Hermia and imagining the happy ending. No, he's headed this way now. He's becoming deeply pessimistic. But remember, his pessimism is based on the facts that he sees. The facts in the natural world, the reality around him. Brief as the lightning in the collied night. And the collied night, again, night, remember, a Midsummer Night's Dream. Night, on the one hand, romance, love. In the dark, anything can happen. It's when lovers come together. This is when you go nightclubbing, baby. But night also is chaos, confusion, darkness, no more light. You can't see the light, you can't see the way. And there's frightening. Night is frightening. That's why, we evolved, our particular species evolved to stay indoors at night because our eyes aren't very good, so we can't see very well. And you can't see very well, you don't have an accurate understanding of what's out there, what's the reality around you. So for the most part, human beings, it's better now because we've got electricity and so forth. In Shakespeare's day at nighttime, you went home, went to bed. All you had were candles. You weren't out on the streets in those dark alleys or out in the countryside where who knows what kind of predatory beast might be roaming. So brief is the lightning in the collied night. Here night is taking on a dark and sinister, it's a symbol of something dark and sinister. And the lightning, the true love, is very brief. That in a spleen unfolds both heaven and earth. Just in a flash, like an impulse, like a knee jerk, and then it's over. In a spleen unfolds both heaven and earth, reveals all, right? It reveals heaven and earth. That's how he imagines true love. When you fall in love, oh boy, you do feel, you are in the moment of the rose when you first fall in love. That's why the rose has become a symbol for romantic love and desire. It's red, right? It's passionate. Right, and it blooms and blossoms. But of course it also fades and withers and dies. And here we see the thorns. But that moment of the rose is the moment where you feel, yes, you feel as if you've spread out wings and you've risen into paradise and you're in heaven. And all of heaven and earth, you're the king of the earth. Nothing can harm you. You really do feel that. I felt that way. You really do feel like you own the world. You are the center of the universe. You and your honey bunny are the center of the world, the center of the earth, and you are in a kind of paradise, a kind of garden, baby, a paradisical garden removed from the world, a heavenly garden, removed from the world, and nothing can touch you. But it's quick as a spleen, a knee jerk, quick as an orgasm. And then it's over. And ere a man hath power to say, behold! So quick, bright things come to confusion. bright things, this idea of true love, they come to confusion. They're destroyed. They're wiped away. They're annihilated. They're swallowed up by this jaws. I missed this good line here. Behold, the jaws of darkness do devour it up. The jaws of darkness. Look at that image there. It's like darkness is a monster. Darkness is personified. It has jaws. It's like a monster, some monstrous dragon. The jaws of darkness do devour it up. Eat up true love. And that's what happens to it. It's devoured up. It's a monstrous moment. The horror of it. Yeah, and think about it. The irony is the more you love, the more your attachment. Again, I'm so used to using this word love, and I just want to impress upon you when I use the word love, let's think of, you can use that, think of it in a romantic sense, but also keep in mind there is this realistic depiction here. But this idea that the more you desire, the more you love, the more you're attached, well, the more you're going to suffer when the jaws of darkness devour it up like a predator. Your love is vulnerable as a helpless prey, isn't it? It's helpless before war and sickness and death. Death, particularly. War that leads to death, sickness that leads to death, death. It's a prey, it's vulnerable. Those jaws of death, of darkness are going to devour it up, swallow it whole, and then excrete it out. Waste material. Waste matter. So quick, bright things come to confusion. The moment of the rose. Yeah. It's quite a disturbing moment. And Lysander has become, he really is looking here, isn't he? Of course, he's focused on his love and his and Hermia's love, their relationship. But for a moment, he's imagining, he's thinking of it in a more general way. He's a team player, isn't he, rather than the individual player. Remember, the comic optimist is focused on his needs, his desires, his happy ending. As long as he's happy, as long as he's cruising down the highway at 70 miles per hour and makes it to work on time, well, who cares if the other cars are driving off in the ditch because he's being reckless? But here, Lysander seems to be, he's moving toward generalizing, thinking about it isn't just his and Hermia's relationship that's confronting this horrible monster that's threatening to devour their true love for one another. So he starts, with this idea, the course of true love never did run smooth, and from there, like an anti-cheerleader, he just keeps sinking lower and lower and lower until, the swamp is just rising above and above, and it's up to Hermia to rescue him. It's up to Hermia to turn this plot line around and remind him, hey, we're not in a tragic reality here, we're in a romantic comedy. This is not some realistic tragedy. And look what she says. If then true lovers have been ever crossed, there's that word crossed again. It's again Shakespeare subtly alluding to the Christian religion. Most in his audience are Christians. Shakespeare, of course, has to be very careful in his day because, all of Europe is ruled by, is dominated by Christianity. Christianity rules the day, and you have to, be careful who you offend in his time. They didn't have this idea of the freedom, the freedom to be removed from religion. No, the religious influence was very powerful and very, it could be a very dangerous thing. So, but here we get, again, this word cross. If then true lovers have been ever crossed, it stands as an edict in destiny. Look, she's using that word destiny. It's written down. It's just, you've got to believe. It's just the commandment of true love. It's an edict of destiny. That's that lovers are meant to be tested. They're meant to be crossed, to see, to test their love. Is their love, their faith, is their love really true? It's a really sadistic view of things again that she has here, isn't it? Yeah, we could take it. Lay it on thick, slather it on. Give me some more of that cancer. I can do it.